Good morning and welcome to 365 Days of Amazing Stories with Theo Mayer. Here we are on day 169, and I'm continuing the story of the third calendar from 1001 Arabian Nights. Now, you might remember that Ajib had found himself on this deserted island, and as he oriented himself to being there, he saw a ship sailing up. The ship moored itself in a small creek. Men got out. Eventually they left a young man buried in the earth. They had taken him down through a trap door, left him. An old man had walked over with him. They'd left him and then covered the trap door back off, set sail, and away they went. Ajib climbed down out of the tree and unburied the trap door, opened it up, and went down in. And there he found this young lad who was sitting on a bed of cushions. And when he saw Ajib, became very, very frightened to see a stranger in this place. And Ajib comforted him and said, "Please, I wish you no harm. I'm the son of a king." And Ajib went on to say, "Perhaps I am here to free you from this tomb that you're buried in right now." Well, the young man, he took some comfort in Ajib's words and then said, "Prince, I will tell you how I have ended up here. My father is a wealthy merchant and sells goods throughout the world. He especially is known for distributing precious stones. Now, there was one thing in his life that he did not have, which was a child, a son, to raise, to love, and to leave everything that he had created and built for himself. He wanted to leave it to a son. I had a dream once that in the next year he would end up having a son, and it so happened that he did, and it ended up being me. He thought this such a miracle and thought me so precious that he consulted all of the wise astrologers that lived in our village, in our town, in our city, and asked them what would be my fate. And all of them, one and all, agreed that I would be fine until my 15th year, and then I would be confronted by great danger. For they saw that there would be a prince whose name was Ajib, son of Kasib, whose hand I would likely die by, unless I was protected during that year. And if I was, then I would live to be a very, very old man. Now, these same astrologers told my father that it would be a especially bad time for me when this bronze horseman that used to be up on a mountain close by here would topple and be brought down. And supposedly for the next 50 days after that, I would have to be very careful. Well, I turned 15 not so very long ago, and 10 days ago, the bronze horseman was toppled. So my father has brought me here. Supposedly, if I can survive the next 40 days, all will be well. So that is how I find myself in this place. But look around. It's beautiful. They've taken care of me. provided me with furniture and beautiful wall hangings and an abundance of food. I think all will be well, for there's very little chance that Prince Ajib will be able to find me here. Well, Ajib continues our story, speaking, remember, to Zubaydah and the rest who were in company that night. I did everything I could to comfort the young merchants, the young son of the merchant. I told him that I would help him in every way that I could, and that all that I would ask in return is to be able to sail off away from this island when the king, or when his father again returned to take him away. Well, the young boy, of course, agreed, and so I became his servant. I brought him water. I helped him bathe whenever he needed to. I prepared food for him. And in this way, we became very good friends. The one thing I never told him, that I was indeed that Prince Ajib, who he dreaded ever meeting. But I knew that I would never wish this young person harm, and so there was nothing to worry about. Our days passed pleasantly, sharing good company, good conversation, and good food. And after those many days had passed, the 40th day had arrived. We had kept track, and the merchant's son was delighted to know that he had passed through this perilous time. He asked me to bring water so that he could bathe, which I did. I warmed it and brought it to him, helped him scrub his body down so when his father did come, he could present himself in as clean and beautiful a way as possible. After he had bathed, he went and lay down on his bed and slept for a little while. And when he awakened, he asked if I could bring him a melon with some sugar. He wanted to refresh himself. Well, I got the melon, I got the sugar, and I told him, there's no knife. I don't have a knife with which to prepare this. And he said, oh, there's a knife, I think, above me in the cornice. I think if you climb up there, you'll be able to see it. So I went over to where he was laying down on his bed, and there above in the cornice, I could see the handle of a knife. I could not reach it, so I climbed, and I reached its handle. But my foot had also gotten caught up in the bedding of the bed, and I slipped, and I fell. I fell directly on to the young man, and as I did, the knife, which I held in my hand, went straight into his heart. He died instantly, and I could not believe my eyes. It was indeed as the prophecy had spoken. He died by my hands. I knew not what to do. I stood in dismay, shocked to the core. And then it came to me that his father would be coming any moment. And I knew that I would not be able to claim innocence for what had happened. I would be held responsible. I would be found to be his murderer. I quickly made my way out. I pushed the trap door open, closed it again, covered it with dirt, and I thought my best luck would be had if I climbed up in a tree again. No sooner had I arrived in its branches when I saw, coming quickly to the island, a ship in full sail. Again it moored itself in the creek, And quickly, servants descended, as well as the old man that had led the boy into the underground chamber. When they got to the trapdoor, it was clear to them that the earth had been recently moved. There was some heightened conversation as they dug to open the trapdoor. The servants opened it, and all the men descended, quietly, without speaking a word. Some moments I could hear the father calling out the name of his son, and then there was a moan and a wailing, and then silence. The servants came out from this underground chamber carrying the old man. He had fainted. They took him to the boat. Some other men came and brought the dead boy. And then, leaving the trapdoor open, they all boarded the ship, pushed out to sea, and raised the sails. I found myself once again alone on this island. For 20 days, I wandered about, finding food here and there, some coconuts and some fresh fruit that had found its way to the island. But the mainland, well, it seemed so far off. At a certain point in time, I looked toward it and thought it was certainly closer than it had been before. The next day, I looked again and I thought, indeed it is. And the next day, it was even closer, until at a certain point, there was simply a small channel of water that separated the island from this mainland. I decided then to make my escape, and I waded across this stream and found myself on the other side. But the other side, I realized, was nothing but a flat, muddy, terrace-like formation. The mainland still was a long ways off, and I trudged as best I could through this murky, muddy substance until eventually I reached dry land. Trees, mountains loomed ahead, but I was so exhausted I could really go no further. I thought, though, it'd be best to get myself a little bit away from this watery mess. And so I made my way to a small hill that I could see. And when I got to the top of the hill, there before me stood a castle that was entirely made of copper. And I stood in dismay, looking at this, wondering where, how, where was I? How did this place come into being? And as I stood, wondering all this, the doors of this castle opened, and out from it came an old man with 12 young men. They saw me and walked toward me, and as they got closer, I saw that all of them were missing their right eye. Well, Scheherazade stopped the story here, as we will as well. What is going to happen next? We'll find out. Hope you have a good rest of your day, and thanks for joining.